Hello guys. Well, David Vose here. It's a beautiful day in Alabama, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Well, we're going to get into the information that we've all been waiting for. At least I have. I have, well, I was off for 7 days, as you guys know. YouTube didn't like one of my videos. So I had a chance to kind of think about this a little bit. And I guarantee it takes a little thought. And, in fact, I believe there's an interesting thought we find in the Bible several times. We talked about that yesterday. Revelation 17 and Revelation 13 both say something about, and here is the mind that hath wisdom, let him count the number. Or there are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is. It's like a Rubik's Cube. We keep talking about this Rubik's Cube. It seems like the Bible is telling us, hinting at the fact that they're giving us a clue. The whole Bible is this big Rubik's Cube. So there's smaller versions of the puzzle. You've got that little paragraph in Revelation. Got another little place over here. But basically, every prophet, if you notice, you ever take a look at what the prophets said, it usually is about, they talk about a serpent. They always talk about the trees and the oceans and the fruit trees and the vine tree and the various things that we find in the Garden of Eden. Certain animals, there's beasts, there's lions, they're all the same animals that you find in the Garden of Eden or in the book of Revelation. And as we said yesterday, there's an interesting thing that we find. It says of Enoch that he was not. This is Enoch. He was not. The only other place that I know of is only used one other time in the Bible, and that is in connection with the beast. It says the beast is not, but shall ascend. The fact that, now the odd thing here is this beast doesn't look like it would have anything to do with Enoch, because we know that Enoch was a good guy. In fact, we've been saying that the book of Enoch is probably letting us know that Enoch is one of the incarnations of Jesus. I think he might have also been Abel, and we'll explain that here in a little bit. And the first 7 individuals in the genealogy from Adam to Enoch, there's 7. The Bible says there are 7 individuals from Enoch to Adam. The 7th in line from Adam. That is the 7 planets, or the 7 gods, and each of the gods had a planet. Corresponds to 7 chakras, and to a lot of different things with 7 in it. But if you notice, there's another, the genealogy goes all the way down to Noah, and if you count them from Adam to Noah, there's 10. This is going to correspond to the beast that has 10 horns. I know, you're thinking, wait a minute, Dave. Again, the beast has nothing to do with the good side. From Seth to Noah's got to be the good side. Then there's this other side, Cain. Cain down to Naaman. And we've said that that's the beast. Because remember, Cain's the one that got the mark. And he was hairy, according to the Midrash. Bestial type. Corresponding a little bit to the story in Daniel where it says this King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, would be the head of gold. And it says that he would become like a beast, go out into the field and grow talons like a bird. He would end up having the feet of a bull or something. Anyway, he obviously represents this animalistic nature that we find in the sky. The beasts, the natures of the astrological natures. So, we've got all these different little funny things. the puzzle is 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is. The other is yet to come. And this whole thing about the beast, some sort of a puzzle. All we know is that the beast is not and that is some sort of a symbol. We have to have the mind that has the wisdom to figure all this out. But if you look at the 2 genealogies, what we're going to find is that the one genealogy, of course, is going to be, there's always these dualisms. So it's going to say that this is the lineage of humans, and this other line is another genealogy of something different, something spiritual. You find that all the way through the Bible. Remember Esau and Jacob. It says, Esau I've hated, Jacob I've loved. Well, they were brothers. Same with Cain and Abel. And various places in the Bible that gives you this. The Apostle Paul mentions that the Jerusalem that is now corresponds to Hagar. Of course, Hagar gave birth to Ishmael, and that is the 12 sons of Ishmael. It seems like a parallel or a image, a reflection of the 12 tribes of Jacob. This reflection, these 2 sides go all the way down. So you always have this woman coming along, because there's going to be a woman seed. The woman has given birth many times in the scriptures. It tells you that there was the Rahab the harlot. She wasn't an Israelite. She was of Jericho. And yet Joshua married her and entered into the promised land. We have Judah, who married the harlot, Tamar. We have Samson, who married Delilah of the Philistines. And all of these individuals. We have Noah, who married Naamah, who goes back to Cain. So Cain is the beast, and that beast has a woman. There are certain, I think, 7 different lineages down to Naamah. And Naamah married Noah. And Noah and Naamah are 2 of these particular deities in the top 10. So, 1 genealogy is of the flesh and 1 is of the spirit. But what's really odd is that sometimes it'll throw you a loop because, for instance, one side starts with Seth, and that's the good side. The other side is Cain, right? But as we've said, in the Egyptian mythology, we've got Osiris and Set. Set and Seth, Seti, they're the same word. So now why is Seth, the good guy in the Bible, the good genealogy down to Noah, why is he somehow the bad guy? He kills his brother Osiris, just like Cain killed Abel. And why did Cain kill Abel? Well, because a bull is a bull, and the bull was always sacrificed. And so this is Baal or Bel or the bull right off the top. We're going to have false gods and good gods. We've called them false gods all this time. All along we've been calling, these are false gods. Well, these are deities that are in the other lineage from Cain. They're real, or they wouldn't be in the Bible. Cain's a real person. As we said, that harlot that was going to be stoned, she was condemned. I got to get my pen, I just dropped. She was condemned by the Jewish law, by Yahweh. He was a jealous God. He didn't want him to serve these other gods. But she was also called holy in the scriptures. The word harlot means holy. So we know that this thing we call the harlot that's always having relations with the king lines is something that as Christians we have never really understood before. And this is what we have to understand. Why is Set producing the lineage down to Noah, and yet and so Set kind of takes the place of Abel. So Abel was killed, and Set replaces Abel. But in the Egyptian mythology, it's Set that kills his brother Osiris. The story is convoluted because we have two different mysteries. As we've said, there's the Babylonian and the Egyptian mysteries. So now, the wheel of astrology goes like this. And this would be the east, and this would be the west. This is where Babylon was. And this is the bottom of the wheel. So there are 6 deities up here and 6 over here. The other city, now remember Cain built the city, his son Enoch built the city on this side. And then there's the other Enoch that built the city on this side. So this is the up, and this is the down. This is the darkness and this is the light. So these are the 2 genealogies. But they run consecutively. They're in us. We have both the light and the darkness, the male and the female. Remember, the Gnostic scriptures talk about making the 2 one. So how do we make the 2 one? There has to be a wedding. And so Naamah from this line marries Noah from this line. And then you have the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom becoming one. The Jerusalem and Bethel coming one. We've got both temples. There's a temple in Jerusalem down here in the Sacrum. And then there's another temple up here that has the Shekinah and the glory and the sun. So this whole thing is the serpent winding up the spine, and the tail is Saturn, and the head is the sun. Now, the interesting about the story here in Revelation is that there are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other is yet to come. We've done a video on this, about 3, 4, almost 3.5 years ago or something like that, where we talked about how, let me do this real quick. Let me show you what we had talked about. Okay. We gotta waste a lot of time doing all this. But all right, let's see if we can get over here and do this. So what we have said is that oops, I almost made a mistake. I guess we can do it that way. So the way that modern astrologers do this, which is very odd because it's all backwards, and it's always backwards. Hello. Lost you guys. Got to get back into the picture here. But it's always backwards. So it's like looking in a mirror when you're looking at the ancient Babylonian. It's the same direction. The sun always goes up in the east and down in the west. That's always. But what it is you can have this backwards and you can have it inverted. And I don't know why, but a lot of the star charts, I think they're inverted and backwards because they don't want us to be able to figure this out. Your mind gets confused when you see things backwards and you don't know how to. Once you see something and you're looking at it backwards, your mind is confused. It's a tool to keep us confused. But just remember that whether we start here and go around this way or here and go around this way, we're still going around this way. The fact that they start the spring over here sometimes and go down doesn't mean that's not accurate. It's just a little tool to deceive, because spring's really over here and goes this way, because this is the summer, this is the day, this is the light, this is the darkness. And there's no way to get around that. The nighttime is at the bottom of the wheel, always. The day is at the top. The sun shines up here. So in this chart, we usually put the moon here, the sun here, and then the children, which is usually Mercury and Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, Saturn. And then in most of the astrological wheels today, it starts over. We got Saturn again, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and then we're back to Mercury again. And so it uses the 5 planets twice, so you have 10. And you guys aren't be able to see me. It uses the 5 planets twice, that's 10. And then the sun and the moon are married, so they don't get an extra one because they're together. They rule. They rule this whole thing. But each of these has wives as well. See? So when in the end, it makes 24. There's 12 and there's 12, which makes 24. But there are only 10 of these deities. You'll remember that in the ancient Egyptian, remember there's 2 of these mysteries. There's one in Babylon and there's one in Egypt. The one in Babylon is a deception. It's trying to keep this information from us. It's all upside down and backwards. And remember what we said when they divided the language? What's that mean? It means separate in 2. Yahweh divided. It doesn't mean he confused it like we think, in the sense that there's just hundreds of languages. There's come to me hundreds of languages, yes. Because the children branched off and they all went out and spoke a different dialect. But in reality, at Babylon, he just divided it. In other words, he took it and he cut it in half and he flipped it. That's how he confused us. What does that mean? Well, remember, they were all one language and one people. Black people, white people, Oriental people, everybody was there at Babylon, the gate of El. Yahweh didn't want them to become like God, to have unity, to have the truth, to have this information that we're about to find today. This information is going to make us like God. It's going to give us the culmination of all that we've hoped for. This is the wisdom, the gnosis that leads to eternal life. Yahweh doesn't want you to have this, so he kicks you out of the garden so that you can't partake of the tree of life. And he puts this wheel, this confusion in front of your face, this going around every which way, around and around and around. It's a law, it's numbers, it's manifestation, it's keeping you in ignorance. So the division happened at Babel. Why? Because Babylon, you see, is here at this right where it's divided. This whole thing is divided, the top and the bottom. And so everything down here is one side of the division, and this is the other side. So one group, the black people, went to Egypt, went to Africa. There were 3 kids, and he divided up the world between the 3 kids. Remember, just like Anu divided up the world between his 3 kids, so Noah divided up the world between Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And so the division then is between Ham and Shem. Now, Ham means burnt. Shem means burnt, black. They were scorched by the sun. That's not derogatory. That's just a description of that child. There's no connotation of inferiority or anything like that. This has come down to us so skewed. The other side is white. Remember that Abraham went to Laban's house to get a wife for his son, and Laban means white. The white people were in the north. We know this. Look at Russia and Scandinavia. They're white people. The further south you go is black people. The world was divided. Not only their skin, their culture, their beliefs, but even their language. So, there's where the division is. Now, Hebrew then, because the Judeans who speak Hebrew, they went down into Babylon for 70 years. When they came out, the Apostle Paul says they came out with blinders. They were blind. Why are they blind? The Apostle Paul tells us again, because the God of this world, the physical world, is blinding their minds. How do you blind your mind? With lies, division. So they went down to the other side, to Babylon, from Egypt to Babylon, where it's going down, And they became blinded by the darkness. And they began to worship, because that God's a deceiver and a liar and a murderer, they began to worship the God at the bottom of the wheel, which is a goat god, which the Egyptians called I-H-A, or I-A-H, Aya. Yah had the sound of a donkey. He looked like a donkey or a pig face. And we've shown in other videos that the Jewish people did have that icon for their God, but they never liked anybody to see it. They would never let anybody see their God or hear his name, because they didn't want to reveal who they were really worshiping. This is talked about. All the philosophers and people in the Stoics and stuff talked about this and laughed about it and everything. And people like Josephus and Pliny and these individuals never denied that their deity did have the face of a pig or a donkey, depending on what. It wasn't really clear whether it was a pig or a donkey. But he made this ah sound, so it's probably a donkey. The division then is simply that our Father in heaven loves us, but Yahweh hates us and does not want us to become like him. So he lied to us and got us to receive a covenant that is not good, and laws that are not good, as it says in Ezekiel. Commandments that are not good, that lead to death, that the Apostle Paul says a bondage and a curse. That Jesus had to come burdened under the law, just like us, came and partook of flesh and blood, as did his brethren, under the law, and of the seed of David, and being in this world, in this lower world that we live in, the place of darkness, then we are under his rule. So everybody who comes into the world then comes into the world because they love not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. They were blinded by darkness. So the whole world is ruled by the God at the bottom of the wheel. Law, order, physical, material, lustful nature. Now, in order to understand these mysteries, we have to understand that Adam, Eve, and all of the 7 individuals, or actually 10, all the way down to Noah, are what is considered 10 horns of the beast. So in Egypt, they had a different system than in Babylon. Today, we're under the Babylonian system, and nothing makes any sense. They start the year at the bottom of the wheel in January. That's not right. We've talked about this before. September means 7. October means 8. November means 9. December means 10. But in our way of doing things today, December is the 12th month, not the 10th. So we're 2 months off. This is part of the system that's backwards. So everything we're doing is backwards. The spring, we're not starting the year at the spring or at the fall, but somewhere in the middle of dead of winter. So everything then has come down from all these different nations. We've had 7 different types and nations that we've gone through. And we're going to find that these 7 individuals, patriarchs, represent 7 races that evolve up the line. And we were all part of all of them. And we all have both the flesh and the spirit within us. And so all of us can trace our genealogies physically back to Adam, and also to that spiritual Adam and that Christ that's in us. So we have both natures. We just have to wake the one up. So in Egypt, they had the original correct language. They had pictographs. It wasn't until Phoenix, the Phoenicians, came along, they made the present language. Now, the Jewish Talmud talks about the original language was not Hebrew. It was a pure language. It was in Egypt. But when Enoch came along, and he came back from God, and he got this great vision, he had to, from his memory, write down the language. So what we have in the Phoenician tongue, which is the letters, Phoenicia, the phonetics that we have today, which was started from Enoch, that came just from his memory once he became mortal again. Everything that he taught was written in a book. It's called the Stars. So if you want to know what Enoch really taught, he wrote it down, and it's written in the stars. But they also took the message of the stars and wrote them in the pyramids. But these were done by prophets and scribes, and sometimes they didn't understand that there were two mysteries, because Marduk fought with Thoth, right? So Seth fought with Osiris, and they had two different systems. So Hebrew and Babylonian goes from right to left. But in English, we read from left to right, and that is the way they did in ancient times with Egypt. Now, they also had a whole different system in Egypt regarding the way you count time. Number one, they only had 10 months. Why is that? Because remember, this beast only has 10 horns. There's only 10 people from Adam to Noah. And those are the 10 horns, the 10 kings. They come in succession. But then there's this other thing with 7 heads. It has 10 horns and 7 heads. So obviously the horns and the heads are part of this beast. So the kings, the 7 kings, have something very similar in to do with the heads, because horns are on heads. Now, you don't normally have horns without a head. This only has 7 heads, but it has 10 horns. Why? Because if you read the book of Daniel, you'll find that 3 of the first horns on the 10, were plucked up by the roots. And only the 7 horns remained. The other 3 were plucked up by the roots. Now, what would that possibly could that mean? Well, you see, the earthly lineage from Cain is only 7, not 10. In the physical, in our comprehension, because it's divided and turned upside down and backwards, and it's confusing because it comes from the lower mysteries, it's not correct. We're missing 3. So we don't even know. We can't see because it's beyond our comprehension. We cannot see Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. Well, there's a lot of ways that we know that this Neptune and Uranus and Pluto are important. Firstly, because they're planets. And the Sumerian tablets did know about them. Talks about them. I was telling somebody the other day, they talk about Pluto and they call it Gaga. So maybe this lady Gaga has got a reason for calling herself that. I think maybe she's calling herself the Pluto, which, remember, is another Latinized way of saying the Sumerian Apollo, which has come down in Greek as Apollo. And that is the Antichrist, or the son of destruction, who's coming. The last planet that we don't even know. That's why they probably told us that Pluto wasn't a planet no more. Pluto means Apollo, the destroyer. But it wasn't big enough. And maybe there's another one coming. So we're like, oh, let's get rid of that one because there's another one coming. People calling it Planet X or whatever. Well, it's the destroyer. And every so often it comes and just destroys everything. We don't know if this is the way it's going to pan out. But there's some indication that this planet that comes out of the abyss. Remember, the abyss is way out there. The abyss is out there in the outer darkness where everything came from. So, who's Neptune? Neptune is Poseidon, in the Greek. So, Apollyon, Poseidon, and then Uranus. Now, they didn't have those 3. What were they? Why didn't they have them? Because, first of all, the one, Pluto, unless Pluto is the right one, but there's some indication that's not even the right planet. That's just some asteroid floating around. It's not even a planet, right? But that one that's supposed to be in that area, they called it Pluto because they know that there's one there supposed to be there originally called Apollo. And it's a bad one, and it only shows up once in a while. Right now it's missing. Well, so we got back Uranus and Neptune. We finally see them with telescopes. But they were missing for a while. Who could that be? Well, you see, when Cain killed his brother Abel, he made a sacrifice. The flesh. A bull. He sacrificed a bull. That's what Abel means. Bel, Bel of the, the Sumerian, the Babylonian god Bel or Baal, the bull. This is Abel, and he was sacrificed right at the beginning. And there's a lot of stories in the mythologies that talk about this. It says that in the Hindu teachings, it talks about their god who killed the bull, and from the bull's death came a seed was born, which became Seth, or the next life. So life starts with a mystery. Adam and Eve have relations, and they end up with their firstborn, who is Cain. Cain's the flesh. The secondborn is the spirit, but it was sacrificed because the flesh, because of its lustfulness and its rage, it has anger, it's violent, it killed its brother. So its brother then is spirit now. It's not in the flesh. They're not one. They're not in harmony. They're not in love. There's a war going on. And this is a division, the flesh and the spirit, the male and the female. So there's some indication that Abel was even female. We always think of him as a woman, or as a man. Now you notice that Yahweh didn't like Cain's offering, but he did like Abel's offering. Now what was that? Well, Abel brought the fatty pieces of a lamb. See, Yahweh wants death. He don't like the vegetables that Cain had. Well, now see, there's this thing where it's blurred. Which side is good and which side is bad. To Yahweh, Jesus was bad. Yahweh killed Jesus, condemned him. Remember the whore that the Jews condemned to die, and Jesus said, "No, don't condemn. I don't condemn you. I don't condemn you. One condemns you, that is Moses, but I come to give you life, and that more abundantly." So there's a lot of stuff that we got to cover here, and we'll probably do videos on this for, I don't know how many videos, because there's so much we need to talk about. I don't even know how to start with this information. And I feel woefully inadequate in explaining all of this to you, because where do you begin with all of this? I have all these little things right now was running through my mind, and I don't even know where to begin. But, so in Egypt, I think is what we were talking about, they didn't have 4 weeks in a year and 7 days in a week. They had 10 days in a week. Sorry, I had to, this thing fell over and I had to put it back on, start it back up again. But, so there were 10 days in a week, and now we have 7. So we're missing 3. Well, there were 10 individuals from Adam to Noah. But the other side is missing 3. We have, in astrology, 7 planets, but we're missing 3. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. This is not just some crazy coincidence, because I don't know who named our planet Pluto. This must be something we've done recently. I mean, every nation has named them differently. In English, we call it the moon, but in some, Sumerian, they call it Nana. We have Shin. We talk about that all the time because Moses went up the mountain of Sinai. Well, in Sumerian or Babylonian, that is the moon. He went up to the moon, and then he also went up Mount Horeb, which is the sun. So Selena is the moon in Greek. Interesting, but Egypt has the name I-A-H, Aya. So that is the original Yahweh. And sometimes it's called Y-A-H, Yah. If you're not certain I-A-H is Yah, they spell it Y-A-H a lot of the time. And that just means Yah. And that was one of their original deities, and that was the moon. Remember, the moon is the lesser light, rules at the bottom of the wheel. So then there was Enki is in the Sumerian is the Mercury. Now we know that in just about every language we know what Mercury is. That's the Latin for the Hermes in Greek. Well, Hermes is an interesting word. once we get familiar with these words and we begin, and remember, Plutarch said that the patriarchs were the gods. All of the patriarchs before the flood they were deified or personified as gods in the other nations. So Adam and Eve and Enoch and Cain and all these people were gods. Some of them were the same name, like Seti, Seth, Enki, Enoch, these names. But we know that in Greek, Hermes, we call it Hermes. In the Egyptian, it was Thoth. Well, you've probably heard the term hermaphrodite. Okay, what's a hermaphrodite? A hermaphrodite is something that's both male and female. Hermes is male. Aphrodite is female. And they had a loving relationship. And they used to be one deity. They were androgynous. So, a hermaphrodite is somebody who's both male and female. And what it means is that in the original teachings, there was this individual named Hermes in the Greek who was one with his eternal bride, Aphrodite. But you see, it's the same as the scriptures. Because we know that Hermes is the same as Thoth, is the same as Enoch. And we know the book of Enoch tells us that Enoch is the Messiah. We know that Enoch is Jesus. So, and we know that this wise teacher, we can show from various different places and mythologies, stories, and biblical parallels, we can prove that Jesus was Enoch Hermes, the Messiah. So, if Hermes is Jesus, then Aphrodite is who? Jesus' wife, Mary Magdalene. I want you to pay attention to the word Aphrodite, because some of you are wondering if, Cleopatra was black or the Egyptians were black. Well, Aphrodite, Mary Magdalene, was from Alexandria of Egypt, Heliopolis, area. They renamed it Alexandria, but it was originally Heliopolis. Well, they moved it too. But we get the word Afro. Black people will have afros. We get that word from Aphrodite because she was black. And she is the one who is married to Jesus. So we could talk more about that. But these are the little things that you find out once you know these, and all this information begins to come together and you understand it. We've been lied to for so long. We don't know what any of this means. So Jesus and Mary Magdalene are the two deities that are very powerful and very important. One of the two main deities of every, Inanna and Dumuzi and all of these parallels. The other pair starts off with, in the Sumerian it starts off with the Abzu and Tiamat. Absu is Abu, or father, Abu. And Tiamat is the word that we get, in Mat in Egyptian is Mot or Mat. And it's a word that we get matter from. We get the word matter from that. Because the material world is the mother, M-O-T-H-E-R, mat, mother. And so Tiamat is the great mother, and Abzu is the father. But then the next two deities is Anshur and Anki. Well, Shar is, as we've been saying, ruler. Most of the deities have this word Sar, Caesar and Khazar and Laosirus. This is the same word for Osiris. So, Anshar is Osiris. And Anki is Ki means the earth. So, An is heaven. So it's the heavenly earth and the heavenly, it's the sky and the earth, and they're married. And then the next two deities is Ki and An. A lot of people can't understand why in Sumerian there's two Ans, like Anu is God, but then his father's An. And some people say, well, maybe it was the same God or something. No, because Anu is a little different than An. And so there are different, they use the word An in lots of things. Even Enlil is An-El. So just about all these ancient names. Look at the fourth chapter of Genesis in the genealogies. Ain, An, and Ki. Enki, An, and Ki. Noach, Noah, Ki, and An. Somehow or another, these two words, An and Ki, are arranged in various ways. Why? Because this is a parable, inside, out, up, down, backwards, and forward. Some of these individuals are the same person, but backwards. So then there are, whole hosts of different words that we'll find. The Ki and the An's in there all the time, the or. So let's kind of put this in perspective here. Let's erase this and see if we can do this without knocking anything over here. So what we can say is that up to this point, we can prove that these gods are the patriarchs, according to Plutarch and Pliny the Elder and others. And they correspond perfectly. There's no doubt. They're the same names. We can show just about anywhere you look, go look it up, and you'll see that Enoch is the same as Hermes, is the same as Mercury in the Latin, Ninningsida, or Thoth. Now, about 3 years ago, I did this little thing to solve this mystery in Revelation, that 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other yet to come. And this is what we did. We made a circle. Well, we can't hardly get this to right. We made a circle. And let's see if we can do this. Okay, it's not too great, but now the way this starts in astrology is we've got the moon, we've got the sun, and then we have Mercury and Venus and Mars, and then Jupiter, can't really write very well. That's backwards, isn't it? How do we do this? I can't write. Anyway, moving on, we have Saturn. Now, that then is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of these deities, planets. But then, in present day astrology, they have the same, all these planets, they start over again. They go Mercury, Venus, and Mars. I'm doing this all backwards now. Anyway, Jupiter and Saturn. So there's a second. Boy, this thing is no good. This looks terrible. But anyway, there's 2 Saturns in a row here. They meet. This is at the bottom of the wheel. And this is the 2 eagles that look, they're looking opposite ways. You've seen the 2 eagles that are looking in opposite directions. And that is where the January 1st, where supposedly the whole thing starts. Well, that's the Babylonian system, which makes no sense and is deceptive, so that we'll never know who we are. We'll never have this information, the mystery, because that's what we're trying to figure out. Well, the little Rubik's Cube tells us that 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other is yet to come. We know that these are the planets. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 1, 2 that have fallen. Mercury hasn't fallen. Venus hasn't fallen. All right, let's start over again, because this is getting confusing. So this is where John would have been on this calendar. See, around the time of the equinox of the astrological eras. So, springtime of astrological ages, which would be Aries, and that was the age of Aries. Just after Pisces had ended, Jesus started the age of Aries, and that lasts for 2,000 years, and now we're going into the age of Taurus. So we're right here. And so, when John was talking, he said he saw things that were, things that are, and things that are going to come. And he was taken unto the Lord's day, and he said he saw things in the Spirit. And so, the 5 that had fallen at our day, when he was in the Spirit, up here would be the moon, the sun, not Mercury, and not Venus, because they haven't fallen yet. But Mars had already fallen. Jupiter and Saturn had already fallen. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that had fallen. One that was still, and the one that's yet to come. And the 8th would be Mercury again, the Messiah, or this would be the other Enoch in the flesh, that Jesus said, when he comes, you will receive him. He'll come in his own name. But I have come in my Father's name, and you have not received me. So this is the coming one, the Antichrist. This is the other. So 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other is yet to come. And the beast that is after is the 8th, but is one of the 7. So the reason there are duplicates in our modern astrology is because we have lost all this information, but it's funny how, even though there are pieces of it that seem to be kind of mysterious, but if you look at these mysterious puzzles, they still, it's like it was designed that way to hide the truth, but yet it's still visible. You can still see it. Because there's a reason why you've got these 7 gods duplicated. Cain and Seth. They are the two, the spiritual and the physical. And so the male and the female, the spiritual and the physical, are what's ruling. So the duplicates is the spiritual part. We've gone down through the darkness, the virgin birth over here with Virgo, and then Libra, and then we go all the way down through the scales and the judgment and the scorpions and the serpents. And then we go through and we get eaten by the beast. And we come up here to this top where the wedding occurs. And so Mars and Venus get married. It's a beautiful thing. When we're doing this, because this is all mysteriously written as a parable, just like any parable, is designed to throw you off. And yet it's designed to help you see the truth if you study it carefully. In other words, there is only one way it'll work, and you have to know all the information, get back and look at it, and wait until you can figure out the puzzle. There's only one way it'll fit. However, there's another system that has the whole system there, but it's all upside down and backwards, and it's very difficult to find the truth from it, because it's like the literature. It's the literality, and it leads you astray. The literal meaning sometimes leads you off the path, because the literal meaning is sometimes symbolic to point to spiritual truths. So the spiritual truth is in the New Testament. The literal parable is in the Old Testament. And if you went by the Old Testament, the letter of it, you'd be dead, because the law is a curse and the bondage, and it appoints everybody unto death. So if you're going to put yourself under the letter, you're putting yourself under the material, and the material always dies. That's its nature. If you put yourself under the spiritual, if you identify with the Christ in you, with that other lineage then you are children of the light, children of our Heavenly Father in the kingdom of light. So you're not going to find today symbols that at first glance just explain everything. At first glance, it's going to be very confusing. For instance, you see that in the Egyptian teachings, we have Set and Osiris, and Set kills his brother Osiris. Now, we've said Osiris is Lazarus, that Jesus resurrected, just like Horus resurrected his father Osiris. Horus was then promptly resurrected. That's Jesus. Thoth also represents Jesus in his primordial existence as he helped Isis to resurrect the physical. So the spiritual within us is helping manifest the true spiritual nature and the physical manifestation of that nature. But because we don't see that there is the duality from the beginning, the Cain and Abel died, this is a mysterious parable about life, how the spiritual is not operative in this world. It's not conscious. It's sleeping in the boat. Jesus is sleeping in the boat. So in our story, we have Set, who is the replacement for Abel. Well, in the Egyptian, we have Set, who kills Osiris. Set's the bad guy. He's the setting sun. And Abel's the good guy. In Egypt, Set's the bad guy, and Set kills Osiris. It's the opposite. Well, there are reasons for all of this. The same reason for David, who's supposed to be a good guy, who sees Bathsheba sunbathing, and he wants her, even though she's married to Uriah. But we never look at all the particulars. Uriah was a giant, a Nephilim, one of the great giants from the scene of Cain. So, same thing with Zeus seeing Rhea, and, he goes down and has a relationship with Rhea. But that wasn't his wife. So, some of these deities are acting in ways that seem to be immoral or something. But it's a story about the earth being ravished by Mother Nature, being ravished by the storm and the wind. And through this ravishing, the seed is born, new rebirth. Sometimes the sun can scorch you. Seti, or Seth, is sometimes a scorching sun. As it's coming down in the late summer, it just scorches the ground. And then the storm god comes in and rains. And there's a mystical parable that's being played out on earth, where Mother Nature gives birth. So, both sides, there's a duality. We need both sides. We need our physical body. We're not saying that the physical is bad, including Naamah, who married Noah, the harlot. But in order for it to be saved, it has to be awakened. And so there is something wrong with the flesh. Not that the flesh itself is wrong, but there's something that's gotten in the flesh that is making it wrong. So it is just deceived. So there are some things in this parable that will never be. The Bible talks about that as the son of destruction, as opposed to the only begotten child, which is going to be eternal. But the son of destruction is appointed unto death, because it's not a mortal being. Remember the Bible talks about the wheat and the chaff that's going to be burned up. The chaff is your body. It's not good people, bad people. It's the flesh all of us have. It's got to go. This is a great mystery. So anyway, probably going to leave it there for now, because this is so difficult. I just wanted to kind of get into this a little bit today, kind of wet your whistle, and we'll try to do this, put this together in a way that really brings some points to the fore that will help us on our journey. I'm going to go ahead and go now. I'm David Vos. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.